Recording. Well, good morning, everyone in Empowered Soul Network land. It's the beginning of a great day, and I can't think of a better way to start off with my good friend and colleague, Dawn Overstreet. I think we're both on the East Coast, Dawn. You're
Yes,
you're in
uh,
you- you're
we're
in Georgia.
neighboring,
I'm in South Carolina. I can almost see your house
yeah,
from here. So,
neighbors.
yeah, we're neighbors. There you go. So, Dawn is just an incredible spiritual leader, way shower. She has traveled North America giving lectures and workshops and doing private coaching and consultation work for many, many years. And I'm just, it's just thrilled to have you here, Dawn. Introduce yourself a little bit more and just tell us what you're passionate about these days. I know that we could talk forever about all this, but what are you passionate about these days?
That's funny. I was just thinking the same thing, Paul, that we could go on for hours and hours. But really, these days, my passion is all about uh, understanding how the experiences that we have when we're really young affect us as we're growing into our maturity, how that affects us in our business and our social interactions and relationships with other people. So I feel like I've mastered a lot of those uh, understandings, from my youth. And I feel like it's really important to share my story so that others can, experience the um, wealth, that I have been empowered with because I took the time to invest in that understanding.
So where do you start, Dawn? I mean, this stories I've been finding in these interviews, they get really poignant and they touch people. And it's amazing how at any one moment, someone on Facebook and working with guidance and that divine energy of the universe, you always tend to attract what you need. And I see people commenting on things that seem to impact them. So for you, where did your awakening start with this realization that childlike experience really is a powerful thing?
Well, I'm going to start at one point, which was an eye opener for me. It's kind of like I'm writing a memoir right now. And,
Hmm?
I decided I was going to write about an experience that I had at the end of last year about going back to a time in my life where I left the United States, went to Canada, became a pioneer there without electricity, without, all of the conveniences, living 11 miles from people, and realizing that I really had a lot more, going on in my life at that time. So I went back without all the distractions this time. 53 years later, after building that place, and I was in a very peaceful, very calm. Of course, everything had changed after 53 years and nobody taking care of, what had been built there. But structurally, I saw for the very first time how incredibly strong it was. The interior of the building looked exactly the same as when it was built. Newness of the wood, the strength of the structure of the people who had no idea how to build a house, how to build these things. And it took me on a journey that brought me, when I came back into the United States after that visit, of realizing that I was really embarking on a journey of what it's like to grow up in a family that was so dysfunctional. And I don't mean I'm judging it, but there were things going on in that family that created a lot of mysteries in my life. It created, I realized I was living at a young age, between 0 and 7, of a lot of secrets. And I realized that what I was seeing and what I was feeling were two different things. And yet, all of these impressions that I was having, during that time, I kind of they became part of me because I didn't know any better, because there were people supposedly guiding me towards a better way of living life. And I realized most recently that, my biggest mystery was about my real father. And nobody wanted to talk about him. Everybody wanted to say bad things about him. And when I was 3 years old, that was the last time I saw him. But what I remembered and what I felt during that time was such a joyous occasion. I was never told, I just learned this like 3 years ago, that I was left in a boarding house with other kids. And my mother took off to Atlanta, Georgia, which, by the way, is where I live now. And she met up with somebody in Atlanta, Georgia, and eventually they got married. And, for the longest time, I would wonder why, when I was young, I felt feelings of separation or being left alone or not really knowing what was going on around me, except probably the not so good feelings that I was experiencing, when I was very young. Um, my stepfather never really wanted me to know anything about my father. I accidentally found a picture of him, which I was amazed at how much I looked like him. And he saw me find this picture and immediately took it away from me and, got rid of it and scolded my mother and all of this stuff. So the mysteries just kept building. And I'm not saying that any of that is bad. What I'm saying is that makes impressions on young people. And they begin to wonder as they get older. When I was 9 years old, I started looking for my real father. And I started asking other family parts that nobody wanted to talk about it. So the mysteries just kept building. Now, some of the things that I learned from those early experiences is that what I bewilderment creates a lot of confusion, and what I felt and saw didn't really match up. And running away doesn't change it or how I felt about it. That was like my thing going to Canada, running away from it all, and life was going to be rosy and all of this. And I loved it. I learned a great deal from my leaving the United States and going to Canada and really experiencing myself. Discovering what I felt was real freed me and my intellect to get to the facts. And that's really important when young people are growing up, especially when they get to that age of, 7 to, whatever, a few more years into their life, they start thinking about things and they want to know what's going on. And I was always some people thought I was very rebellious. I always thought that I had been given by my real father the freedom to find my own facts. And my stepfather was an amazing businessman, so he was all about facts. And together, that combination of things was amazing to me at how strong it made me to really challenge, what I heard or what I felt or what I saw or what I knew going on in life around me was all about. Um, what this has meant in evaluating my experiences I realize that a child always knows. I've always been attracted to young people, and young people have always been attracted to me. I remember my very first tour that Dr. Cole gave me in 7 states surrounding Atlanta, Georgia, is that I went into Alabama and I had to stay over because so many people came to those programs. But who wanted to lead those groups of older people? A 16-year-old. And I just was so happy that I saw this happening in front of me, that a seminar and a workshop had inspired somebody in their youth to want to know more about themselves and to be a leader of themselves. And that's actually what, I've always looked for within myself, is becoming my personal leader.
I mean, that's an amazing story. So if somebody is feeling those kinds of feelings, like there's something that's missing, there's a mystery they can't pin down. How do you suggest, or what are some hints for people to start exploring that? Maybe they don't have, another parental figure or somebody to talk to. Well, how do they start?
Well, let me just say this, Paul. One of the things that I realized as a child is that secrets create distrust.
Hmm.
And there is no freedom in secrets, only confusion. So for me, it was my will to go beyond what I was experiencing because I knew what I saw and I what I was looking at was real. I knew what I felt was real. So for me, it was about really learning to go beyond the limitations that were in my environment, to search for myself. I mean, I was 28 years old when I finally got involved in my own personal search. And the thing about that is so important to me is that the realization that our personal is me, my inner guidance, or those real feelings that I have about what's going on around me, and how important it is to go towards that, and to really search for that personal meaning of it's just me, it's just my inner guidance, and it's all about what I've come here to do, And I do believe that my message to the world and the people that I work with, it's about clarifying that mystery, those mysteries that surround us because we have not been given the facts.
So it sounds like, as I'm listening, it sounds like that one of the keys for people is they have to put down everything else. They have to put down their concern for or the worries about someone else. Well, it could be very close, their families, their jobs, and just really take a moment to rise up and become the most important person in their lives for that moment. Otherwise, they're going to see it through the rose-colored glasses of everybody else's thing that they're involved in. Is that what you're saying? I hear you saying, come here
That's so
to start
true,
out.
Paul, because I'm a prime. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And the reason I agree with that is because I had the experience for that. I saw how manipulation works, getting something at the cost or the price that I would have to pay in order to have something. I saw all of the, discomfort that it brings. When I become uncomfortable with something, I know there's something not right because there's no reason for me to not be comfortable in every situation that I might be in. I can overcome these things by realizing that and accepting that everybody is doing the very best that they know how to do. Listen, I give my parents a lot of credit for the flamboyant way that they live their lives. Back at 25 years of age, my mother, she was living outside of the box. I mean, she grew up in a very religious family. Her family disowned her when she found out she was pregnant with me and running off, somewhere to get married and start a new life and all of that. I mean, that was just unheard of back in those days. And I feel like I got a lot of that from her in a very gentle way. that it's okay. Even though when I was growing up, she wanted me to be her a different way, that was more traditional, than she might have lived her life because she felt guilty. And gosh only knows that those kind of things that we do when we're growing up can create those emotional seeds that begin to grow inside of us and confuse us until we are just so tired of it. That it's time to find a better way. And that's why, at 28 years old, I decided there's got to be more to life than I'm experiencing. I wanted to know about all those things that were going on inside of me so that I could stop the stressful, worrying, distrustful, things that had been embedded in me when I was growing up. And I realized that it was up to me to put emphasis on what is true for me. That's a big thing. And balancing life is harder when I am not engaged in my own direction. So I needed that direction, in my life to know what I was going towards and to realize that everything else is just a fragmentation if I get involved in it. So the life without inner guidance to me is when I'm working harder, not smarter. And, I also learned how empathy is understanding me so that I can see where others are and having that detachment. Because when I'm working with somebody spiritually, I have to really see them. And I have to, and that was my mentor, with Way Shores College, is that he saw me, not all the garbage that had been embedded into me. And he gently guided me towards me. And when a person finds them, regardless of all the things that have gone on and they heal those aspects within themselves, there is no greater feeling. I even learned that my enthusiasm for life isn't something outside of me. I was taught to be the hostess with the mostest when I was growing up, and to make everybody happy. And that was such a false impression of what enthusiasm to me is all about. My email address forever since computers came into play has been enthusiastic dawn. And I feel like the enthusiasm level that I experience inside of me, that fulfillment of what I've done for myself, and what enables me to help other people do for themselves. Because I'm not a scientist, but I am a master of my life experiences, and I have made them very practical in my life because that's what I came here to do.
So one of the things that there was uh, going through my mind as you were talking is you have two beautiful daughters, Willow and Meadow, and grown up and with a lot of this kind of awareness. Yet they're their own person. They've got their own soul experiences and challenges. How have you helped them to grow and to feel free to do what you've done and to at the same time to be that mentor to them, so maybe it's a little easier than where have you seen the joy of all of this with your kids?
I have to laugh about that one because I remember being in a chorus down in Salisbury, Pennsylvania, and Dr. Cole asked me, he said, "You give them so much room." And I was like, but of course, that was the thing that was lacking in my own upbringing. I
Mm.
saw that so clearly that everybody wanted to tell me how to live my life, where not go to Juilliard School of Music, because it was just a hobby. But the first job I had in New York City was singing in a nightclub. So, I began to realize, have moments or glimpses that what I was listening to was not exactly how I was feeling, nor was I going to let that get in the way. But I think just giving the room to young people to experience themselves and to experience their life experiences without limitations, without hesitation, without a lot of rules and regulations, to give them an opportunity to realize that this life is all about them experiencing at their own timing, their own pace, and how important that is. So, giving young people room is what I say that people experience, especially young people who come around me. I look at my daughter Meadow right now, who has blossomed, into an amazing young woman with an amazing career, and how much people love her that come around her because she gives them that space and she's so accepting of where they are. And yet, at the same time, she's always learning from them.
So, if you were to uh, have a group of parents or coaches or leaders, those people that are helping others to rise up, what are some of the keys that you could share with them on how to help them have that space? Sometimes kids are so rebellious that the boundaries that you're trying to set to just help things stay alive, and there's always those tugs of wars and things like that. So how does that leader, coach, parent, how do they manage the real world life of the young kid needs to learn what a stoplight is, and all those kinds of at the same time, that freedom. How do you help? What are some of the clues to find the balance?
I'll give you an experience. My daughter Meadow, who was a basketball player and now is a professional officiator, um, when she was young, and she went to school in Pugwash, Nova Scotia. She was quite the tomboy. I mean, she was just like out there, like wanted to play with the boys and, do whatever they wanted to do. Very much like when I was growing up. I wanted to do all the hard things, because I wanted to be challenged in life. And she came home one day from school and she said that there was this really big guy there and he kept bullying her. And the first thing that I thought about was, well, she's out of my hands, when she's at school. And so I suggested that she go talk to the people at the school. Well, come to find out, she did that about 3 times, and nothing ever happened. He kept coming at her, he'd punch her, he'd do all these things, physically get abusive with her. So she came home one day and she was sitting there and she says, "This is not working." And I looked at her and I grinned and I was like, okay, well, what are we going to do here? So I looked at her and I said, "What would you do if you were in?" She said, "What would you do if you were in my situation?" I said, "Well, probably what I would do is that I would approach this young man and I would let him know that I did not want him to do that anymore. And then I would haul off and give him a sock in the face." Well, I didn't think she was going to do that, but she did do that. So, of course, we get hauled into the office of the principal, and I just looked at them and I said, "Well, I told you once, she told you once, she told you twice, she told you 3 times." And I suggested that she take matters into her own hands. The moral of the story is kids who are rebellious are just experiencing something they want to do, something that they feel a real need inside to do. So get out of their way, you know, get a consultation on worrying about them. Talk to somebody who's gone through this because science hasn't. Science is about statistics. Look for consultants who have the experience for what you're experiencing, and they can be of assistance because it'll be about helping you help yourself. So that's what my life is about, helping people help themselves.
And I'll bet that bully never did it again, right?
Never.
So many different ways to skin the cat and pathways to the solution. That's awesome. That's
Just
awesome.
have to
Helping them
know
find their
what's
own path.
needed.
There you go. There you go. Well, Dawn, I mean, this has just been delightful. Any kind of final umbrella thoughts for how people can begin to find that pathway to discovering and, you know, revealing their own mysteries and finding those answers for themselves?
Yeah, one of the things that I said earlier, Paul, and I'm a firm believer in it because it's what freed me, was people need to not only know that they have inner guidance, they need to know how to communicate with their inner guidance. You know, these are souls that graduated planet Earth, completed their purpose or plan here on Earth, because this is just a big school ground for all of us. If I'm not learning, what's the good of being here, you know? And that, you know, find the nearest consultant, because refinement is something I do on a daily basis. And my inner guidance helps me to go in the direction to find the next experience, to refine the spiritual qualities that I came here to develop as a soul. I just happen to have a physical body because God can't be here without it. But my words of wisdom is that everybody needs inner guidance, and they need to know how to work with their inner guidance. And this will empower them with the freedom that they need to investigate their own life, and to give that freedom to other people to be able to learn about their own life. It's the greatest investment a person can make in themselves.
It sounds like the one of the keys to all of it is realizing you don't have to walk the path alone. You know, there's help there to walk with you to unfold the secrets of my childhood or whatever it is that a person's direction is. There's a whole team there to help.
Yeah, and I think I always knew that as a young child, because that's what kept me out of real not wanting to live anymore. You know, it's what drove me towards going beyond the limitations that society puts on a young child. And I didn't know this until I, you know, had that consultation, and then became 2 weeks later a consultant of that consultation because of the strength that it brought me, and the, you know, every day I practice, you know, working with my inner guidance, because it's not something you just get and pay money for and then don't do anything with it. What good is that going to do if I don't make practical what I invest in? There is no hope that I'm going to accomplish my purpose here this lifetime on planet Earth.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well said. How can we get in touch with you, Dawn? How can people connect to learn more about what you're doing, the consultations you're talking about? How can we reach you?
Well, I already gave a little hint. My email address is enthusiasticdawn. If you don't know how to spell it, I'll spell it in the thing afterwards, because a lot of people don't, at gmail.com. And I would love to hear from anyone who is sincere about learning how to be a better you, and to be a better you to those people that come into your environment and are seeking guidance towards their own mission this lifetime.
Well, there you go, folks. Empowered Soul Network. Here's a wonderful empowered soul, Dawn Overstreet. Dawn, thank you so much for joining us today. Stick around for just a minute. We'll chat after we end it today. And guys, coming up in a couple hours, we've got some more Carla Hooker and then Sarah Rose after that. It's going to be a great day at Empowered Soul Network. Thank you, Dawn. Take
Thanks,
care.
Paul.
Talk to you
You too.
soon.